The explosion tore through the mining station's hull like paper. Commander Zektal watched through his ship's viewscreen as human bodies tumbled into the void of space, their mining suits glowing like dying stars against the black. His 4 eyes tracked each one with cold precision. Another successful raid. "Sir, we've secured the lithium reserves," his lieutenant reported, mandibles clicking with satisfaction. 17 humans eliminated. No survivors detected. Zektal's scales shifted, from deep purple to pale blue, a sign of approval among his kind, the hegemony. For 3 cycles, they had been harvesting resources from human colonies on the outer rim. Weak creatures, these humans. Soft flesh, fragile bones, and laughably primitive technology. "Excellent. Begin loading the—" A proximity alarm shrieked through the bridge. Red lights bathed the command center as his tactical officer's voice cut through the chaos. "Commander, 3 human vessels approaching fast. They're moving faster than our long-range sensors predicted." Zektal's primary eyes narrowed. "Impossible. Human ships barely achieve half-light speed. Sir, these readings show they're traveling at 0.97 light speed, and they're accelerating." The first human ship materialized on their screens. Sleek, angular. Nothing like the bulky cargo vessels they'd been destroying. Its hull gleamed with an almost organic sheen, and strange energy patterns danced across its surface. "Incoming transmission," the communications officer announced, his voice trembling slightly. "Put it through." The viewscreen flickered, revealing a human female with short-cropped black hair and eyes that held no fear, only cold determination. Scars traced her left cheek, and her uniform bore insignia Zektal had never seen before. "Hegemony vessel," she said, her voice steady as bedrock. "I am Captain Elena Vasquez of the Terran Defense Corps, Special Operations Division. You have exactly 30 seconds to surrender before we demonstrate why attacking human colonies was the worst mistake your species has ever made." Zektal's scales flushed deep crimson with indignation. This human, this fragile creature, dared to threaten him? His ship alone carried enough firepower to glass a small moon. "Human," he growled, leaning forward in his command chair. "You face Zektal of the Hegemony First Fleet. Your pathetic species has provided adequate entertainment, but playtime is over. Prepare to join your mining friends in the void." Captain Vasquez's expression didn't change. If anything, her eyes grew colder. 15 seconds, alien. I'd suggest you use them wisely." Zektal cut the transmission with a sharp gesture. "All weapons, target the lead vessel. Show these primitives the price of defiance." Energy beams lanced. Out from his ship's primary cannons, the same weapons that had reduced countless human settlements to ash. But something impossible happened. The human ship simply wasn't there anymore. "Where did it go?" Zektal roared. "Sir, it's directly above us. How did it—" The impact sent Zektal sprawling across his bridge. Alarms screamed as his mighty dreadnought shuddered like a child's toy. Through the chaos, he heard his weapons officer shouting impossible readings. "They're not using energy weapons, sir. It's some kind of kinetic bombardment, but the mass readings don't make sense. It's like they're firing miniature black holes." Another impact. This time, Zektal felt his ship's shields that had withstood the firepower of entire fleets, buckle and fail. "Evasive maneuvers," he commanded, but his helmsman was already shaking his head. "I can't, sir. They're everywhere at once. It's like they're teleporting." Through the viewscreen, Zektal caught glimpses of the impossible. The human ships moved like living things, bending space around them in ways that violated every law of physics he knew. When they fired, reality itself seemed to twist and scream. His ship lurched again, and this time the lights flickered. Emergency power kicked in, bathing everything in an ominous red glow. "Hull breach on decks 7 through 12, his damage control officer reported. "We're venting atmosphere. Sir, with respect, I recommend immediate withdrawal." Zektal stared at the tactical display. In less than 3 minutes, these humans had reduced his mighty dreadnought to a crippled hulk. His escort ships were already limping away, their own hulls scarred and broken. "How?" he whispered. How is this possible? The communication channel crackled back to life. Captain Vasquez's face filled the screen once more, but now Zekital could see something in her eyes that chilled his alien blood. Not anger, not hatred, something far worse. Disappointment. You know, Commander Zekital, she said conversationally, as if they were discussing the weather. We've been watching your people for months, studying your tactics, learning your weaknesses. Did you really think we'd just sit back and let you slaughter our colonies? Zektal's throat went dry. Impossible. Our intelligence indicated humans possessed no advanced military technology. Your intelligence was looking at our civilian population, Vasquez replied. What you've just encountered is why we keep certain divisions classified. Tell me, Commander, have you ever heard of genetic enhancement, psychic warfare, quantum manipulation? The words meant nothing to Zektal, but the tone in which she spoke them made his scales crawl. I'll make this simple, Vasquez continued. You have a choice. Withdraw immediately and never return to human space, or we continue this demonstration. And trust me, alien, what you've seen so far is just us being polite. Zektal looked around. His ruined bridge. Half his crew was injured, his ship was crippled, and somewhere out there in the darkness, 3 human vessels waited like predators. For the first time in his military career, Commander Zektal of the Hegemony, First Fleet gave the order to retreat, but as his ship limped away into hyperspace, one thought consumed his mind. What else didn't they know about humanity? As Chapter 2, The Awakening. Protocol. 3 weeks later, Zektal stood before the Hegemony War Council on their capital world of Kethmore. The assembled generals and admirals listened in stunned silence as he recounted the encounter. When he finished, the chamber erupted in disbelief. Preposterous, snarled General Vexhai, his massive form rising from the crystalline council seat. No species could advance so rapidly. Our scouts reported primitive chemical rockets mere cycles ago. Admiral Corseth's tentacles writhed with agitation. Zektal speaks truth, she said, her bioluminescent patches pulsing with each word. My own fleets have encountered similar resistance in the Tau sector. Human ships appear from nowhere, strike with impossible weapons, then vanish. Supreme Commander Thaklon, eldest of the council, raised one ancient claw for silence. His voice, when it came, carried the weight of 1,000 conquered worlds. Show us the recordings, Commander. The chamber darkened as holographic displays materialized in the center of the room. Every council member watched in stunned silence. As the human ships danced through space, their movements defying everything the Hegemony knew about physics and warfare. Pause, Thaklon commanded. The image froze on Captain Vasquez's face. This human spoke of genetic enhancement, psychic warfare. What did our xenobiology division conclude? Zektal's scales shifted nervously. They found no evidence of such capabilities in previous encounters. Because you were fighting civilians, a new voice interjected from the chamber's entrance. Every head turned as Science Archon Meldara glided into the room, her serpentine form moving with liquid grace. Bioluminescent data nodes dotted her skull, pulsing with stored information. Archon, Thaklon acknowledged. Your analysis? Meldara's form coiled around the central hologram. I have spent weeks studying the combat footage. The implications are disturbing. She gestured, and the hologram shifted to show a detailed analysis of the human weapon's effects. Observe the quantum signatures. These humans are manipulating space-time at a subatomic level. The energy requirements alone should be impossible for a species their age. General Vexhai snorted. Perhaps they stole the technology. From whom? Meldara's multifaceted eyes fixed on him. The Hegemony possesses the most advanced military technology in known space. Yet these weapons are beyond even our theoretical understanding. She manipulated the display again, zooming in on one of the human ships mid-maneuver. Watch closely. See how the vessel phases in and out of normal space. They're not using conventional propulsion. They're folding reality around themselves. A murmur ran through the council. Even the most advanced hegemony ships required massive engines to achieve faster-than-light travel. These human vessels seemed to dance between dimensions. "There's more," Meldara continued. "I detected quantum entanglement patterns in their formation flying. Their ships aren't just coordinated, they're literally connected at a subatomic level. Perfect synchronization across vast distances." Admiral Corseth's tentacles curled in confusion. "How is such coordination possible?" "That," said Meldara, "brings us to the most disturbing discovery." The hologram shifted to show bioscans of the human crew members. I analyzed residual energy signatures from their transmissions. The humans operating these vessels aren't entirely baseline anymore. Their neural patterns show enhancement beyond anything in our databases. Zektal felt his blood chill. Enhancement? Genetic modification? Cybernetic integration? Possibly even psychic amplification? Meldara's voice dropped to a whisper. "They've somehow evolved beyond their natural limitations. Supreme Commander." Thaklan was silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his ancient voice carried a weight that made the chamber feel smaller. "In my 1,000 cycles of conquest, I have seen species adapt to survive. But never have I witnessed evolution this rapid, this deliberate." He stood, his massive form casting shadows across the council chamber. "What are we truly facing, Archon?" Meldara's bioluminescent nodes pulsed in complex patterns, a sign of deep calculation among her species. "I believe, Supreme Commander, that we have made a critical error. We assumed humanity was a young species stumbling toward the stars. But what if we were wrong? What if they've been preparing for this contact for longer than we imagined?" "Preparing how?" General Vexhai demanded. "Consider the evidence. Ships that manipulate space-time, weapons that bend physics, crews enhanced beyond biological limits. This isn't the random technology of a primitive species. This is the result of careful long-term planning." Zektal's scales shifted to deep blue as understanding dawned. "You're suggesting they knew we were coming?" "I'm suggesting," Meldara replied, "that humanity has been watching us just as long as we've been watching them. And while we saw only their civilian population, they were studying our military capabilities and developing countermeasures." The silence that followed was deafening. Supreme Commander Thaklan's claws scraped against his command throne. "If what you suggest is true, then our invasion plans are based on completely false intelligence," Meldara finished. "We're not facing a primitive species, Supreme Commander. We're facing a civilization that has spent decades preparing for galactic warfare." Admiral Corseth's bioluminescence flickered rapidly. "My fleets are scattered across 17 sectors, engaging what we believed were easy targets. If these enhanced humans are present throughout their territory, they are," Zektal said quietly. "The transmission patterns match across all encounters. This isn't isolated, it's coordinated." General Vexhai's massive fist slammed against his seat. "Then we increase our forces, deploy the full might of the hegemony. Against an enemy whose capabilities we still don't understand?" Thaklan's ancient eyes fixed on the general. "That would be the height of foolishness." He turned to Meldara. "Continue your analysis, Archon. I want to know everything about these enhanced humans, their strengths, their weaknesses, their limitations." "And our fleets?" Admiral Corseth asked. "Pull back to defensive positions. No more raids until we understand what we're truly facing." As the council began to disperse, Zektal remained behind, staring at the frozen image of Captain Vasquez. Something in her expression haunted him, that look of disappointment as if she'd expected better from them. "Archon," he called as Meldara prepared to leave. She turned, her serpentine form coiling gracefully. "The human captain." She spoke as if this confrontation was inevitable, as if she'd been waiting for us. Meldara's bioluminescent nodes pulsed slowly. "Perhaps, Commander." She was. Chapter 3. The hidden truth doctor Elena Vasquez stood in the observation deck of the TDS Prometheus, watching Earth rotate slowly beneath them. The blue marble that had birthed humanity looked peaceful from orbit, but Elena knew better. In secret facilities scattered across the planet and throughout the solar system, the greatest minds of her species worked tirelessly on projects that would determine humanity's survival. "Impressive performance out there, Captain," came a familiar voice behind her. Elena turned to see Admiral James Chen approaching, his weathered face showing both pride and exhaustion. At 63, Chen was one of the few people alive who remembered when the Terran Defense Corps was just a theoretical organization. "Thank you, sir. Though I have to admit, part of me hoped we'd never have to use those capabilities." Chen joined her at the massive viewing window. "The hegemony made that choice for us when they started massacring civilians. How are the crew holding up?" Elena considered the question carefully. The 3 ships under her command weren't crewed by ordinary humans. Not anymore. The enhancement process had changed them in ways that even their creators didn't fully understand. They're adapting well to the neural interface improvements. The quantum entanglement link between ships is holding steady, and Lieutenant Morrison's precognitive abilities gave us a significant tactical advantage. And the physical modifications. Elena flexed her hand, watching tendons that now contained synthetic carbon fibers ripple beneath enhanced skin. No major issues. Strength is up 400%. Reaction time improved by 70%, and the regenerative capabilities are exceeding expectations. Chen nodded grimly. "Good. Because our long-range scouts are reporting massive hegemony fleet movements. They're pulling back for now, but when they return, it won't be with exploration vessels." Elena felt a familiar chill run down her spine. One of the side effects of her enhanced nervous system was an increased sensitivity to danger. "How long do we have?" "Intelligence estimates 6 months, maybe 8. They're clearly reassessing after your encounter with their commander." Elena remembered Zektal's expression when she'd disabled his dreadnought. Shock, confusion, and something else. The dawning realization that his people had severely underestimated humanity. "Admiral, there's something I need to ask. The neural modifications, the genetic enhancements, the quantum weapons, this technology is decades ahead of anything in the public sector. How long has the government been preparing for this contact?" Chen was quiet for a long moment, his reflection ghost-like in the viewport. "Elena, what I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest levels. Only a handful of people know the full truth." He turned to face her directly. "We've known about the hegemony for 37 years. Elena felt her enhanced cardiovascular system spike as adrenaline flooded through her modified bloodstream. 37 years? How? 1988. A damaged hegemony scout ship crashed in the Sahara Desert. The crew was dead, but their computer systems contained star charts, military doctrine, and detailed intelligence about dozens of conquered species." Chen's face grew grim as he continued. "We learned that the hegemony had been observing us for over a century, waiting for us to develop spaceflight so they could begin harvesting our resources. Their standard procedure was to allow primitive species to build basic infrastructure, then sweep in and strip mine entire solar systems." Elena's enhanced mind processed the implications rapidly. So the space program, the technological advances of the last 3 decades, all driven by the knowledge that we were on a timer. Every breakthrough in genetics, cybernetics, quantum, physics, it was all focused on giving humanity a fighting chance when the hegemony finally arrived. Elena stared out at Earth, seeing it with new eyes. The volunteers for the enhancement program, did they know? They knew we were preparing for possible alien contact. They didn't know the specifics. Chen's voice carried the weight of decades of difficult decisions. We couldn't risk panic, and we couldn't risk the hegemony learning that we knew about them. So the last 30 years have been one massive military preparation disguised as peaceful exploration. Not disguised, Elena, both. We genuinely hoped we'd never need these capabilities, but hope isn't a strategy. Elena felt a new understanding settle over her. The enhancement process hadn't just changed her body, it had connected her to a legacy of human determination that stretched back decades. How many like us are there? Currently, about 12,000 enhanced personnel across all branches. But the program is expanding rapidly. Within 5 years, we'll have enough enhanced individuals to crew a full battle fleet. Elena's tactical mind began calculating possibilities. 12,000 enhanced humans with quantum weapons and reality manipulation technology. That could level the playing field. If we use them correctly, Chen agreed. But Elena, there's something else you need to know. The enhancements we've developed, they're not our end goal. They're just the beginning. Before Elena could ask what he meant, her neural implant chimed with an incoming priority message. The data flowed directly into her consciousness. Casualty. Reports from hegemony raids across the outer colonies. They're accelerating their attacks, she realized. Hitting harder targets, probing for weaknesses. Chen nodded grimly. Commander Zektal may have retreated, but he's not stupid. He's testing our response capabilities across multiple fronts. Elena felt her enhanced tactical systems begin processing threat assessments and response scenarios. The quantum entanglement link she shared with her enhanced crew members was already buzzing with strategic calculations. Admiral, request permission to deploy additional enhanced units to the Outer Rim. If they're going to probe our defenses, let's give them something interesting to probe. Chen smiled, the first genuine smile Elena had seen from him in weeks. Permission granted, Captain. But remember, our goal isn't just to defend human space. It's to make the hegemony realize that conquering humanity would cost them more than they're willing to pay. Elena nodded, her enhanced neural networks already beginning to formulate plans that would have been impossible for an unmodified human mind to conceive. Don't worry, Admiral. By the time we're done, they'll understand exactly what humanity is capable of. As she spoke, Elena felt something stirring in the quantum field that connected all enhanced humans, a collective consciousness that was more than the sum of its parts. Somewhere in that shared awareness, she sensed thousands of her enhanced brothers and sisters preparing for a war that would determine the future of human civilization. The hegemony thought they were facing a primitive species. They had no idea that humanity's greatest strength had always been its ability to adapt, to overcome, and to become something greater than what they were before. Soon, Zektal and his people would learn why challenging humanity had been their greatest mistake. Chapter 4. The Price of Evolution. Commander Zektal hadn't slept properly in weeks. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw those impossible human ships dancing through space, their weapons tearing reality apart like paper. His scales had permanently shifted to an anxious yellow-green, and his crew had begun to avoid him. The bridge of his new command ship, the hegemony, had deemed his previous vessel too damaged to repair, hummed with activity as they approached the Kepler mining station. Intelligence suggested it was another soft target. Minimal defenses, mostly automated systems, rich in rare earth minerals. "Sir, we're detecting the station's beacon," his tactical officer reported. "No military vessels in the area." Zektal studied the tactical display. The mining station hung in space like a metallic spider, its processing arms extended toward a nearby asteroid field. It looked identical to dozens of human installations they'd successfully raided. "Energy signatures?" he asked. "Standard fusion reactors? Basic communication arrays? Nothing that suggests military enhancement." Zektal's mandibles clicked nervously. "Are you certain?" His tactical officer's scales flushed with mild confusion. "Sir, the readings are identical to previous civilian targets. If there were enhanced humans present, surely we'd detect their quantum signatures." Zektal wanted to believe it, but something felt wrong. The station was too perfectly placed, too obviously vulnerable. After weeks of studying human tactics, he'd learned that they rarely left anything truly undefended. "Begin the approach, but keep all weapons powered and shields at maximum." As they drew closer, Zektal noticed something odd. The station's communication arrays were more sophisticated than they appeared from a distance, and there were strange, geometric patterns on the hull that seemed to shift when he wasn't looking directly at them. "Sir, incoming transmission from the station." Zektal tensed. "Put it through." The view screen flickered to life, revealing a human male in standard mining coveralls. He looked tired, frightened, exactly what Zektal expected from a civilian. "Please," the human said, his voice shaking. "We're just miners. We don't have any military weapons or defenses. If you let us evacuate, we won't resist. It was perfect. Too perfect. Zektal leaned forward. You are wise to surrender, human. Begin evacuation procedures. You have 10 minutes. The transmission ended, and Zektal watched as small transport pods began launching from the station. Everything appeared normal, but his instincts screamed danger. Sir? His science officer called out. I'm detecting some unusual quantum fluctuations near the station. They're very faint, but what? They match the signature patterns from your previous encounter with the enhanced humans. Zektal's blood turned cold. All stop! Reverse engines! But it was too late. The mining station began to change. What Zektal had mistaken for geometric patterns on the hull revealed themselves as sophisticated holographic projectors. The civilian mining facility dissolved like a mirage, revealing something that made his worst nightmares seem pleasant by comparison. The true structure was massive, easily 3 times the size of his own ship. Its hull wasn't metal, but some kind of living material that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. Weapon systems emerged from hidden compartments with organic fluidity, and the entire structure seemed to breathe. What in the void is that thing? His weapons officer whispered. Before anyone could answer, space around them lit up with impossible energies. But these weren't the quantum weapons Zektal remembered from his previous encounter. These were something far worse. Reality itself began to warp around his ship. His crew screamed as they felt their consciousness being pulled from their bodies and then snapped back like elastic bands. The artificial gravity fluctuated wildly, and several officers were thrown against the ceiling before crashing back down. They're inside our heads. His communications officer shrieked, clutching his skull. Zektal felt it too, a presence probing the edges of his mind, reading his thoughts, learning his fears. But worse than the violation was the sense of vast alien intelligence behind the probe. This wasn't just advanced technology, it was evolution beyond anything he'd imagined possible. The evacuation pods that had launched earlier suddenly revealed their true nature. They weren't escape vessels. They were some kind of assault craft. But as they moved toward his ship, Zektal realized the humans inside weren't wearing standard spacesuits. They weren't wearing anything at all. The enhanced humans moved through the vacuum of space as easily as if they were swimming through water. Their skin had a metallic sheen, and patterns of light pulsed beneath the surface like living circuitry. When they touched his ship's hull, Zektal watched in horror as their hands simply passed through the metal as if it wasn't there. Hull breach! Someone shouted, but there was no decompression, no rush of escaping air. The humans had somehow breached the hull without actually damaging it. Then they were on the bridge. Zektal found himself face to face with beings that had once been human, but were now something far beyond that simple classification. Their eyes glowed with internal light, and when they moved, reality seemed to bend around them. One of them, Zektal thought it might have been female, though the modifications made it difficult to tell, stepped forward. When she spoke, her voice resonated directly inside his mind. Commander Zektal, she said, and somehow he knew she was smiling, though her face showed no expression. We've been waiting for you. What? What are you? He managed to whisper. We are what humanity becomes when we stop limiting ourselves, she replied. We are the next step in our evolution, and you have given us the motivation to take it. Another of the enhanced humans glided forward, this one definitely male, with bioluminescent patterns covering his skin like living tattoos. Your people have been observing us for over a century, he said, his mental voice carrying undertones of amusement. Did you really think we wouldn't notice? Did you think we wouldn't prepare? Zektal felt his legs give out beneath him. The implications were staggering. How long have you known? Long enough to prepare a welcome, the female replied. Long enough to understand that your species sees others only as resources to be harvested. Long enough to decide that the galaxy would be better off without the hegemony. The male enhanced Human moved to Zektal's tactical station and simply placed his hand on the controls. Immediately, every system on the ship began responding to his will. Weapons powered down, shields dropped, and navigation locked onto a new course. "We're taking you home, Commander," the female explained. "You're going to deliver a message to your war council." "What message?" Zektal asked, though he was terrified of the answer. The enhanced humans exchanged a look that seemed to communicate volumes without words. When they turned back to him, Zektal saw something in their glowing eyes that made his alien soul quake with fear. "Tell them," the female said, "that humanity accepts their declaration of war. Tell them that we've been preparing for this conflict longer than they can imagine. And tell them that when we're finished, the hegemony will serve as an example to every other species in the galaxy of what happens when you mistake humanity's patience for weakness." As Zektal's ship began its journey back to hegemony space, now under complete human control, he realized with growing horror that his species had made a critical error. They hadn't attacked a primitive civilization. They had awakened something that had been waiting in the darkness, preparing, evolving, becoming something that could challenge the established order of the galaxy itself. The question was no longer whether humanity could survive contact with the hegemony. The question was whether the hegemony could survive contact with what humanity had become. Supreme Commander Thakalon stood alone in his private chambers, staring out at the sprawling capital city of Kethmore. For the first time in his 1,000-cycle career, he felt truly old. The reports covering his desk told a story that would have been unthinkable just cycles ago. Hegemony fleets were in full retreat across 17 sectors. 3 major military installations had simply vanished. Entire worlds had gone dark, their populations disappeared without a trace. And the humans were spreading, not through conquest, that would have been understandable. They were spreading through evolution. Species that came into contact with them began changing, adapting, becoming something more than they had been before. The transformation appeared to be voluntary, but once it began, it was irreversible. A soft chime indicated an incoming transmission. Thakalon accepted it, and Captain Elena Vasquez appeared on his private screen. But she looked different now, more than she had even during their previous encounters. Her eyes held depths that seemed to contain entire galaxies, and when she smiled, Thakalon felt as if she could see directly into his ancient soul. "Supreme Commander," she said, her voice carrying harmonics that human vocal cords shouldn't have been able to produce. "I trust you received Commander Zekatal's report?" Thakalon's claws scraped against his command throne. "Your point has been made, human. The hegemony acknowledges that we underestimated your species' capabilities." "Oh, Thakalon," Elena said, and the casual use of his name without title sent a chill through the old warrior. "We're just getting started." The screen shifted to show images that made Thakalon's ancient heart skip beats. Human settlements that looked more like organic cities than technological constructs. Ships that moved through space like living creatures. And everywhere, beings that had once been various species working together in perfect harmony. "What you're seeing," Elena explained, "is the future, not human supremacy. We learned long ago that such concepts are primitive. What you're seeing is synthesis. Evolution, the next step forward for all sentient life. And those who refuse this evolution?" Elena's expression grew sad, and somehow that was more terrifying than any threat could have been. "Choice is sacred, Supreme Commander, but so is consequence. Your people chose to see other species as resources. Now you must live with the results of that choice." The transmission shifted again, showing hegemony worlds that had been touched by the human expansion. But they weren't conquered. They were transformed. The beings living there moved with a grace and purpose that Thakalon had never seen before, and their cities pulsed with bioluminescent beauty. "Your species has great potential, Thakalon," Elena continued. "Your warrior tradition, your tactical brilliance, your long lifespans, all of these could contribute to something greater than the sum of their parts, but only if you choose to let go of the old paradigms." Thakalon felt the weight of decision pressing down on him. He thought of Zektal, who had returned from his encounter with the humans, changed. Not physically, the transformation was voluntary, but mentally. The commander spoke now of possibilities instead of conquests, of growth instead of expansion, and if the hegemony chooses to continue on its current path, Thaklon asked. Elena's image flickered, and for just a moment Thaklon glimpsed something vast and incomprehensible behind her human appearance. When her form stabilized, her eyes held infinite sadness. Then you will discover that humanity's greatest weapon was never our technology, our evolution, or our adaptability. Our greatest weapon has always been our ability to inspire others to become better than they are. And sometimes, Supreme Commander, that inspiration requires difficult lessons. The transmission ended, leaving Thaklon alone with his thoughts and the weight of his species' future. Outside his window, the first stars of evening began to appear. Somewhere among them, humanity continued its expansion, not through force, but through something far more powerful. They offered transformation, evolution, a chance to become part of something greater. And across the galaxy, species after species was choosing to accept that offer. Thaklon reached for his communication panel and began composing a message to the War Council. It was time for the hegemony to make its choice. Time to decide whether they would cling to the old ways and face inevitable obsolescence, or embrace the future that humanity offered, a future where the strong didn't prey upon the weak, but instead lifted them up to heights previously unimaginable. As he worked, Thaklon found himself wondering what it would feel like to truly evolve, to become part of something larger than himself. For the first time in his long life, the ancient warrior felt something he had never experienced before. Hope. End of story.